In all the content I share and all the things that I do, there's one thing you guys ask me about more than anything else, and that's my triple monitor setup. That's why for this video, I've decided to cram in everything I possibly can share about monitors into one video. Now for those of you looking for monitors versus VR, I have already made a video for that, you can go back and watch it, but today is all about monitors. For the last 3 years, I've been racing with the same AOC C32G2 monitors. They're $1,500 32-inch monitors, 1080p resolution. But those aren't the ones you guys saw in the intro. We'll talk about those more later in the video. But before we get into that, I want to talk about monitor size for a minute. Because the standard used to be 27 inches for sim racing, especially if you were running a triple setup. But I don't really think that's the case anymore, and I definitely think 32 adds a lot more value. When I first started the channel, I had a 34-inch ultra-wide, which is about the equivalent height of a 27-inch monitor. And over time, I added 2 additional 27-inch monitors, and I got a pretty good horizontal field of view. But I was always lacking in the vertical part. The monitors always just felt too short, too scrunched, and it just didn't have everything I was looking for from a triple monitor setup. And since that setup, I've been pretty committed to 32-inch monitors. Every now and then I toss around the idea of going bigger, but with space constraints, I'm a little iffy. Plus, I've kind of figured out how to get a really natural POV video once the rig's enclosed using the 32-inch monitors, so that's kind of where I've stayed. But with concern for frame rates, I've basically only been running 1080p the whole time. Now to add a little perspective to that, I run a 7800X 3D processor and a 7900 XTX graphics card, along with 32 gigs of RAM. So the computer itself is pretty beastly, but at the same time, I also render 3 separate images in my Iracing setup, because otherwise I find that I don't really like the passenger side and the way it looks. So I like to keep the images separate, which definitely taxes the PC heavily. Your PC's capabilities are probably the biggest thing you need to consider if you're thinking about triple screens. A lot of you guys ask, will a 3070 run a triple 32-inch setup or something older than that? The truth is, when I started out, I started with an RX 580 graphics card. It was already outdated at the time. I was still able to run triples, but you're going to have to make a lot of compromises. First off, if you're running an older GPU, you're going to have to run lower resolution. You're not going to be able to have all the bells and whistles that the game offers and get that nice crisp image. It'll run it, it's just not going to be super crisp. You're also probably going to be very limited to 1080p. If you try to run 1440, you're going to overpower the graphics card. You're going to get a lot of stutter and really low frame rates. Even with what I would say is the best AMD graphics card you can get right now, I still see big frame drops having gone to 1440 now, which we still haven't talked about, but we'll get there. So that means for those of you that are bouncing around the idea of going to a 4K triple monitor setup, unless you've got a 4090 or a 5090, I really wouldn't recommend it. Like, yes, you can do it with some graphics cards, but you're not going to get good performance from them. And ultimately, you'll be sacrificing your frame rates and everything else just to have that 4K resolution. And ultimately, if you can't take advantage of every aspect of it and run everything close to maxed out, what's the point really anyways? Now on the flip side, if you are 100% committed to 4K and you're willing to sacrifice some immersion, you do have the option for a super ultra wide monitor like a 49-inch or something like that. But in my opinion, that just puts you back in the 27-inch height range, basically like limiting your vertical real estate. Me personally, I just don't care for it. Plus, I like having screens wrapped around the sides of me. It just feels more immersive. It looks better in my opinion. But I do know that some people will consider that option, and it's on the table. But I'm not really going to focus on single monitors too much because ultimately I think the end all be all for sim racing is triple screens. And yes, if you guys didn't know, I am also one of those people that prefers triple screen to VR. But I will say, it's thanks to VR that I realized that I really needed more resolution in my life. And about 3 months ago, I decided to order 3 new 1440p monitors that ended up not arriving. And after I had to cancel that order, I decided to wait a little bit longer. Plus, we had the move and the new race room and all those things to set up. And then with the Black Friday deals, I decided to finally pick a 1440p monitor to put on the rig. And after a few days of agonizing over which monitor to go with and, what was going to look best in POV footage and going to look good to me at the same time and provide the clarity I wanted. And basically just thinking through everything, reading reviews, I ended up landing on the Asus TUF VQ1B, and I'm really happy with the results. Now, obviously 1080p is always going to give you the best performance as far as frame rates go because it's the least taxing on your PC. But if you really want to enjoy decent frame rates with a good image quality, I think 1440p is kind of the sweet spot for triple screen sim racing. Now, as you guys have been able to see as I've been talking, I did film from the 1080p monitors and the 1440, so I could hopefully give you guys kind of a comparison. Now, I don't know how this is going to look when I upload it to YouTube, but I'm really hoping you guys will be able to see how clear the 1440 is compared to the 1080p. So going from 1080 to 1440, I expected my frame rates to drop, which they did quite a bit. But what I didn't expect, and in a weird twist, was that my sense of speed actually improved. Now, whether that's the monitors or a setting I accidentally changed or just a slight tweak in the angle of the monitors, I don't know exactly. But I can tell you that the car feels like it's going the right speed now, more so than it did before. And I think it's actually impacting my lap performance. I expected to actually lose time, and I'm actually gaining it with changing out the monitors. So that could just be a setting. That could be something I had wrong before. I don't know exactly. I'm not going to say that going from 1080 to 1440 is going to improve your lap time. Don't take it that way. But in this case, it really did. And it was kind of an interesting twist that I wasn't expecting. All right, guys. In the beginning of the video, I told you that we were going to talk about everything triple screen, and I was going to share as much information as I possibly could. I didn't want this to turn into an Asus TUF review or just focus on resolution. Those were just the key factors that I really wanted to get into, because I think resolution is probably the biggest decision you're going to have to make, and the one where everybody wants to go 4K, but then has to decide where they fall between 1080 and 4K. That being said, now I want to cover something else you guys asked me about quite a bit, and that's what angle the monitors are at. The funny thing is, typically the monitors are at weird angles that I don't know, because I always freehand it. In this case I did too, but I went back and measured. And when I freehand, usually I end up with the right side monitor being cocked out quite a bit more than the left side, simply because of how I want the cockpit view to look. And I do that, like, as somebody who only races GT3, it works. If F1 was something I did a lot more, or open wheel or center seat, it wouldn't work the same. But in this case, with the 1440 monitors, I actually ended up with an angle of about 120 degrees on the left and right side, give or take a little bit, which typically doesn't happen, but I think it looks good the way it is. That could be where my perception of speed came from. I might have been throwing it off by having that right monitor angled out. In fact, I probably was, but ultimately I liked how it looked in POV videos and everything. And a little bit of it had to do with the bezel kit too, because I was losing color because of the viewing angle. With these monitors, that's not such an issue with like the color shift or anything. Like, they tend to be better with the viewing angle. So I think a lot of that contributed to how I got where I'm at. But ultimately, yeah, 120 is the angles of the monitors now. Now, another big thing that comes up a lot, or like a hot question I get, is about the wheel placement. Now, you'll notice I have a shaft extension right here off of my Fanatec wheel. So my entire Fanatec wheelbase sits behind my monitor, and it's able to come up a bit higher and put the wheel in a perfect angle and perspective to where when I'm sitting in the seat, I can see through the middle of the wheel down to the dash, just like you would in a real car. Without a shaft extension, the wheelbase isn't able to go up far enough. So you really need to be able to get the wheel back there. And as far as the monitor height, it is a little high based on a few things. First off, I do run a 3D printed dash back here. If you guys follow the channel, you're already familiar. In order to be able to fit that dash, I have to run the monitors a little bit high. Also for the POV video. So when I sit in the seat, the wheel is just slightly high. You can see when I come up here, it's probably about my neckline, which realistically, I think about 2 inches down would have been more ideal. At the same time, it works. I've gotten used to the angle. If you guys are not running POV videos, don't have a dash, you'll probably want to bring your whole setup down probably a couple inches below where I have it right now. But like I said, I've gotten used to it. Now, every now and then I run into somebody who also has struggled to get rid of the black line when using a bezel-free kit. And it's kind of a little bit tricky, but you just have to overlap the monitors a little bit. If you try to put the corners together, you're gonna see a dark line. It's gonna create too much of a bezel for the kit to eliminate. But in this case, a little bit of overlap, putting the left and right monitors just a little behind the middle monitor as you butt them up together will make the bezel just a little bit smaller and just tight enough to where you can get this clean view with no dark lines. And if you're wondering how the Asus bezel free kit fits on a 32-inch because you can only find a 27-inch kit, you have to get these little extenders. I bought them off Etsy. I could 3D print them now that I have a 3D printer, but I didn't at the time. You just buy them off Etsy, clip them onto your bezel free kit, and it'll extend it to where you can fit it onto a 32-inch monitor. Now, for those of you specifically racing in iRacing, just to touch on a few things that I've been asked about in iRacing specifically. First off, if your dash on the right side is wrapping all the way across the monitor and you're not getting a passenger side window, you need to check the Render 3 Images option in your graphics settings. That'll allow it to move everything to where it's supposed to be. For some reason, if you don't do that, it likes to just kind of make your monitor all one wraparound thing. It looks awful. The other thing, for those who have said that the graphics look better on mine than yours, I have a whole thing on how to set up and color tune, but you guys need to color tune your GPU. If you guys want to check out that video, it's towards the middle of the Cup Car 2.0 build section. So within the last few months, you guys can see how I color tune the GPU, but you definitely need to do the color tune in order to get it to look right, because iRacing tends to run inherently warm and it makes it look pretty cartoonish if you don't. I know a lot of you guys are anxious to see me get back to work on Cup Car 2.0, and I am equally as anxious. But over the next few weeks, I have a little bit of gear I'm going to be testing from Apex Sim Racing, including the Moza AB9, which historically hasn't worked well as a shifter for sim racing, but I'm going to take a shot at it, see if I can have any better luck than anybody else. I know it's not likely, but if I could get it to work, I feel like it would be a really awesome shifter, so I still want to play around with it and see what happens. For those of you that have subscribed to the channel, I'm almost at the goal of 5,000 subscribers that I wanted to hit by the end of the year. Thank you guys so much for that. I really appreciate it. For those of you that haven't subscribed, if you want to join this journey, know what happens with the Moza shifter, or see the Cup Car 2.0 build come together, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And until next week, I'll see you guys out on the track.